Good morning. It's Tuesday. It's 10 a.m. Means it's time for coffee and conversations. Glad you are here this morning. Got some announcements, coffee and conversations. We're going to be in Acts chapter 7, verses 9 to 16 today, since we decided to break up chapter 7 last week to look at the different parts of Stephen's sermon. Good morning, Jill. But let's talk about announcements. So this Saturday is men's breakfast. Ladies, invite your guys. Let them know 8 a.m. There's normally bacon. So what more needs to be said? A lot more. There's bacon, the Bible, fellowship. If you don't like bacon, there's always other food. And so it's a good time. So guys, show up. Ladies, let your guys know. Kick them out of bed. Whatever. Good morning, Bill. Jill said, Bill said, good morning. Just huge shout out, huge thank you to everyone who participated in the missions trip fundraiser on Friday night. We raised $8,250 or $60. I can't remember. It's in that range. So that's huge. That's more money than we raised at our last dinner, dessert, silent auction by a significant amount. And so that's awesome. But there's still a ways to go for the missions trip for them to raise their funds. So if you haven't given yet and you want to contribute to that, we would love for you to do that. You can put it on the memo line, missions trip, on a check. You can give online through the Church Center app. There's a variety of ways for you to give, and we would love for you to support them on this trip as they go and do this trip where they help support that conference that's happening later in the summer. So we would love for you to help support them, help send them on their way as they go to serve Jesus and serve his church. In addition to that, we have the garage sale coming up in July for that trip. And so if you have stuff that you want to donate to give that they can sell, awesome. We would love for you to do that. You can connect with Pastor Joel about that and let him know what you have and how you can contribute and help with it. And then lastly, we have a Vacation Bible Schools coming up in July. So the Mission Trip fundraiser is on 7/8, 7/7 and 7/8. And then the next day, on 7/9, we have church at the park at Lake Wilderness. And then the next day, Vacation Bible School starts in the evening. So that's going to be a packed week. Want you to know about it. Want you to participate in all of it. And I hope you will volunteer with Vacation Bible School, whether it's praying or help getting crafts ready or serving snacks or being here and letting yourself get hit by a water balloon or something, participating in a game, helping with a craft, being a group leader where you lead the kids to the different stations and whatnot. We need lots of help and we want you to help. So we want you to participate. We want you to invite neighbors, family members, friends, people you know who have kids in the age range. We want them to participate. So it's kids who have completed kindergarten through kids who are completing 6th grade. So I hope I got that right. I might be wrong. I think I'm right on that. But we want you to invite neighbors, family members, and friends to this so their kids can come learn about Jesus and learn about the armor of God and how to fight the schemes of the devil, how to put on the full armor of God. So it will be a great time, and I know the kids are going to love it. And I'm pretty sure we'll have the bounce house at the end of the week since it fits perfectly with this theme. And so it'll be exciting. I'm going to throw the registration link in the comments so you can grab it and you can share it with people. Hopefully, yep, there we go. So that is the registration link, and you can share that with with people you know who you want to invite and you want them to sign up. It's going to be a great time, and it'll be a ton of fun. So July 10th to the 14th in the evening. So let them know and get them signed up so they can participate. All right, let's jump into Acts chapter 7, verses 9 to 16. And this is kind of the next paragraph in that section. What is happening Stephen has, where's my Bible? Where did it go? It was on there. There we go. It was on there before, and then it disappeared, and now it's back. So last week, if you remember, we looked, and Stephen starts out with his speech in his defense. He starts telling them about their shared history, that they are all of the people of Abraham, and he starts with this idea that God calls Abraham, and God is working in the life of Abraham, and God promises a child, and the child comes later in his life and brings about, is brought about by Isaac. And then he says, and so Abraham became the father of Isaac and circumcised him on the 8th day. And Isaac became the father of Jacob, and Jacob of the 12 patriarchs. So this is, at this point, everyone in the audience would be agreeing and saying, yeah, that's exactly how our family started. That's exactly how our nation, our people started. This is our history. No one's going to argue or dispute this with Stephen. And he continues and he says, and the patriarchs, so the 10 tribes who are older, well, the patriarchs besides Joseph and Benjamin, were jealous of Joseph, and so they sold him into Egypt, but God was with him. So he's recounting the event of where Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers because they were jealous of him, because if you remember, he has that coat of many colors. He is dad's favorite kid, and he is favored in the family, and the other brothers are jealous of that because this isn't how it's supposed to be. Jacob is making it really hard on one of his kids by treating him outside of social customs, cultural customs, outside of just the way things were done. It was the firstborn that was supposed to be treated most favorably, but Jacob doesn't do that. He doesn't even treat the first lot of them as favorable. He treats Joseph as favorable, and it's like Joseph gets special treatment because of who his mother was, and not because he had any special ability in and of himself. Dad likes him because of who his mom was. And so they were jealous of Joseph because he got that special robe, the coat of many colors. He is at home working in the house when the brothers are out working in the field. It's like Dad has put Joseph in the manager's office while the rest of the boys are out on the assembly line. And Joseph is, and then Joseph has this dream and he shares it with them. And he says, you're all going to bow down to me. And Joseph didn't help himself. And so his brothers don't much like him. They're jealous of him. And so they sell him into slavery. But throughout the process, throughout it all, we see that God was with Joseph. Joseph later at the end of his life says, you meant this for evil, but God meant this for good. That God was with Joseph the whole time, even in his descent into prison, his descent into slavery. God was in that, working to bring about a good, an incalculable good, as we talked about in Esther, of God's purposes. And he rescued him out of all his afflictions, gave him favor and wisdom before Pharaoh. So God is the one who brings Joseph up out of slavery, out of prison. If you remember the story, Joseph interprets two dreams for two of Pharaoh's helpers. One is favorable, one is not favorable. And eventually, after a long time, that dream is told to, or that interpretation of the dream is told to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh has another dream that causes him great anguish, and God gives Joseph the ability to interpret the dream, and Joseph tells it to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh, as a result of that, makes him ruler over Egypt and over all his household. Now there's Pharaoh, and then there's Joseph. And now there came a famine throughout all Egypt and Canaan, and a great affliction, and our fathers could find no food. So they are at a time when there is a significant, serious famine of 7 years, that that Egypt is starting to starve. Those in Canaan are starting to starve. It is a serious famine, and but because of Joseph's wisdom, because of Joseph's ability to interpret the dream, Egypt had food. Egypt became a place where other nations could come and get food and buy food. And so because of this, Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, and he sent our fathers, so the patriarchs, on their first visit. So he sends all of them but Benjamin to go get food, to go purchase food, to bring it back to Canaan. And in the story, Joseph says, you can't come back to get more grain unless you bring your brother, because I think you're lying to me. He's trying to draw out his brothers, to draw out his family to come back to Egypt. And then on the second visit, Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and Joseph's family became known to Pharaoh. And Joseph sent and summoned Jacob, his father, and all his kindred, 75 persons in all. And Jacob went down to Egypt, and he died, and he and our fathers. And they were carried back to Shechem and laid in the tomb of Abraham that Abraham had bought for a sum of silver, and from the son of Hamor in Shechem. So Stephen is relating this portion of the story, and this portion of the story is going to be critical for what he talks about later, because he's going to show that these men are like Joseph's brothers, that these men are going to be jealous of God's work. They're going to reject God's work, the way that God was working through these circumstances. They're going to oppose God. And Joseph shared 2 dreams of where he would be elevated, and his brothers rejected those dreams. And we know that in Bible times that if there were two dreams showing the same thing or very similar things, it was intended to be God's way of communicating that this was certain. This is what happens with Pharaoh and Pharaoh's dreams. We see grains growing up and devouring others, and cows growing up and devouring others. And for Joseph, I think it's grains. It's for sure cows. They are jealous of him, and they reject God's plan. And this is going to be a repeated pattern throughout Stephen's sermon, is that the people who should have known better, the people who should have understood God's plan, reject God's plan. The people who are called into relationship with him and are called to be following him are going to reject him. And this is the repeated pattern. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees and that ruling council do this with Jesus too. And so he's telling the story in such a way to remind them of their shared connection, but also their history's propensity to reject God's plan. And that's going to be critical at the end, because he's going to show, hey, look, you are now doing the exact same thing that all our forefathers have done. They have repeatedly rejected God's plan. They did it with a variety of times throughout their history, and there will be moments of faithfulness and then rejection, moments of faithfulness and rejection, individuals of faithfulness in the midst of rejection by the wider group. And so he's telling this story in such a way that he's going to weave it to be able to get to his culminating point of calling them to repent and calling them to account for their sin. And so he does this at this point. He includes that juncture of, look, they were jealous, and yet God used that to accomplish his purposes of bringing all of the nation of Israel at that point in time, which is just 75 people, into Egypt. And then they all die, and then they remain in Egypt for the 400 years that he brought up before. And God spoke to this effect, that his offspring would be sojourners in a land belonging to others, who would enslave them and inflict them for 400 years. So he's weaving this together to help people see where we're going to go. So he's again using that fishing analogy. He's put out the line, and the hook is in, but he hasn't quite said it yet. And so he's going to come through and kind of put the bait out and let them get used to it and let them be shaking their head in agreement. Yes, this is great. This is true. This is right. We agree with everything you're saying until the very end. He's going to sink the hook and catch them, and they're not going to like it. So he tells this portion to remind them of their history and their forefathers' rejection of Joseph, their jealousy of Joseph, which caused them to do a terrible thing to their brother, but God ultimately used it for his good and their good, or his glory and their good. So, friends, as we continue on in this, we'll keep breaking it down just kind of by paragraphs. And so we'll go a few more weeks. I might start clumping them together more, just because the next section, huge section, is Moses. So, yeah. So, just as a reminder that we should not reject God's plans. We should work with God's plans and trust God's plans, and what he's revealed is true. We should operate according to, even if it doesn't make sense to us sometimes. And when we're sharing with people, we want to share the reality of who they are, who we are, what our shared history is, and our unity is. We're all sinners, and we all need rescuing. And so, yeah. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your week. If you have any questions, shoot us an email. We'll see the men on Saturday, and then everyone else see Sunday. All right. Have a great rest of your week.